Everybody, happy Tuesday. Well, I got my sweater on. You don't have your sweater on, Kurt.
It's hot. It's all right. But you're right. It's a little chilly out there for, what is it, May 21st?
I know. Kind of cold. One of our audience members said sweaters today, tank tops tomorrow. That's what goes around here. So happy Tuesday and welcome to our TV show, My Success. I'm Kim Martin, founder of I've Decided and one of the hosts of the show today. And I am with Kurt P. White, my co-host.
Your new co-host.
My new co-host. Yeah. So inaugural.
There we go.
That really should be our weekly winning word.
Or debut.
Our debut. Because we have inaugural debut things happening today.
What is our word?
So our weekly winning word is assess.
I'm glad you pronounced that for me. I thought it was asses.
Kurt, your mother is in the audience.
Oh, sorry,
Watch
Mom.
it. That's hilarious. Actually, it is assess.
Okay, assess.
Our weekly winning word is assess. And so on our inaugural show, as Kurt is the co-host here today, and we have a live audience, and we are going to do a show that's going to help people understand how to assess your insurance policy. Oof. Our coverage coach, Noelle Tatlock.
We're not doing it, right?
Thank the Lord. Because when is the last time you've ever assessed your insurance policy?
Maybe never.
Yeah, I don't think I have either.
So.
Except for when you need it, then you're thinking, well, I've got full coverage insurance.
Right.
It should be covered.
Yeah, as you're filling out the police report.
Right. And then all of a sudden you start praying going, I think I have full coverage. I ask for full coverage.
Yeah, after that big bird hits your windshield.
Well, last year, a couple of years ago now, we actually hit a deer when we were on vacation. And,
right.
You do start thinking as soon as something like that happens, in all seriousness, like, oh, my Lord, do I have coverage? Am I going to get a car? Am I going to be out of a car?
And so many times, you would assume then with full coverage, they've got nothing to worry about. But I think Noelle's going to touch on some of that and say that, well, don't assume everything.
You know what they say about assume?
Yes.
I don't say those words.
I want me to have another show besides my debut show, so keep my comments to myself.
I hear you. All right. Well, you know what? I don't want to take up any more time. I want to introduce you. We come up with this name, Noelle and I, and as soon as she said it, I got super excited because I just thought that is perfect. A coverage coach. She is so passionate.
And it describes perfectly what it is she's offering to do for us. So,
it is. Yeah. She wants to help us understand our policy. So coach us a little bit and educate and inform. And that's what I decided is all about. Educating, informing, and helping people achieve their goals. So without further ado, we want to introduce you to our awesome coverage coach, Noelle Tatlock from Farmers Insurance, and she's going to help us understand how we can trust our insurance policy. Thanks, Noelle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So, probably the best way to explain this is to break down your policy. And so when I have someone come into the office and we're going to talk about some auto coverage, this is typically what I will do. So maybe not on this big of a piece of paper, but certainly, we'll go through the same sort of motions. So the best way to think about your auto policy, it's broken down into basically just two sections. And so you've got section number 1, which is your liability, and you have to excuse my handwriting, and then what I like to call the product portion of the policy. So an auto policy, you can think of it as being broken down into two. So you've got your liability portion, and then you have your product portion, okay? And so under liability, we actually have limits of liability that go with that. And we're not necessarily going to get into the limit of liability today. I was going to focus more today on the product portion and what that means. And so we'll have people call into the office maybe or sit down with me and say, Noelle, I want full coverage insurance. So what does that really mean? What does full coverage mean? So that's more of the product portion. When I say the product, I mean that is the vehicle that we are covering. So then I will say, okay, well, what are you driving? There might be 1, 2, maybe 5 or 6 vehicles in the house. And the good news is you can pick and choose your coverage for each of those vehicles. So, different circumstances, different maybe years of cars, that kind of thing. So focusing on the product portion, you can break that down into what I'm going to say is comprehensive and collision coverage. So I would say most people are familiar with, at least you've heard those words in insurance. And so when you purchase a policy from an insurance company, you're purchasing the liability, and then there's actually limits of liability that you can purchase. And you're also purchasing potentially comprehensive and collision insurance, okay? So what does that mean? Comprehensive coverage used to be called OTC coverage, and that just means other than collision. So if you think about getting into some kind of an accident, I know, Kim, you talked about maybe a deer possibly that you had hit at one point. Comprehensive coverage would be the coverage that would kind of kick in at that time if you hit a deer. So we think about comprehensive collision. Again, comprehensive is everything but collision. So if you have hail damage on your car, if you hit a deer, something falls from the sky, your house burns down and it melts the car. So that is something else a lot of people don't realize, is that some people say or assume that if the home burns down and it melts the car, that the home insurance policy would pick up, and that's not the case. If you do not have comprehensive coverage on your policy for that particular vehicle, you would have no coverage, okay? So when you look at comprehensive and collision coverage, you are actually purchasing deductibles. And so that's where this will help kind of set the rate as well. So you can purchase, and it kind of just depends. It starts at maybe $50, $100, a $0 deductible. So you can choose maybe, $100, $250, $500, maybe $750. So what'll happen is you'll call up and we'll say, okay, once we know what limit of liability you want, we say, okay, we want to add comprehensive coverage. Okay, great. What would you like your deductible to be? This is something that helps set the rate of the premium of the policy as well, which is something, again, we're also very concerned about. So the smaller the deductible, the higher the premium. That just means you're taking on that much more risk. So more risk that you are willing to take on, the less that it's going to cost you from the insurance company, okay? So let's say, for example, Kim, you chose a $100 comprehensive deductible when you hit the deer, and so then you would be responsible for the first $100, and the insurance company would pick up for repairs of your car after that, okay? And so then OTC, like I said, other than collision. Now that's a really good way to remember comprehensive, okay? And then we have collision. And again, you can choose your deductible. And so your deductible that will be for collision insurance. So again, you would choose what deductible that you would like to have. So think of it as like going along and adding things to your policy. So we have liability, and then you say, okay, yes, I want comprehensive coverage, and then you choose whatever deductible you would like. And yes, I would like collision insurance as well. So again, this is if you actually collide with something, collide with another vehicle, collide with something in a parking lot, right? So that would be collision. And then again, you choose your deductible. So that's the portion that you're responsible for up front, and then the insurance company would cover that. Now, when most people call the office, they'll say, I want full coverage insurance on my car. Okay, fantastic. A lot of people assume that full coverage also includes towing and car rental. And that's actually something that you need to share with somebody if you're shopping insurance and you want full coverage and you want towing or car rental as well, okay? So again, just to review, you're going to purchase your liability portion. If you want to add comprehensive and collision, then you would choose your deductible. And then we have all of the extras that go with it. And this is, I think, the detail of a policy sometimes that gets overlooked. Because really, I think at this point, we kind of stop, and then we just assume that that's everything else is covered. And that, again, is not the case. So let's say somebody says, yes, Noel, I want to add towing. Okay, great. So we have liability, comprehensive, collision, and now we're going to add towing to the policy. And again, each company is going to be different. You'll want to make sure that you ask the agent maybe the details of the towing policy if they have. Sometimes they'll have a maximum amount that they'll pay out, things like that. So just that's a good question to ask. Maybe how far will they come in and tow me from a certain place, or how much, is the maximum amount that they'll pay. So good questions to ask as well, okay? And then after towing, then we can maybe add on car rental. So here is most of the time where people call again and they say, okay, full coverage. What they really mean is I need liability insurance, I want comprehensive, I want collision, I want towing and rental. I would say probably 50% of the time, once I go through this and really start asking questions and, okay, would you like towing? Would you like car rental? And really section it out for somebody, we find, I would say probably 50% of the time, it's not even needed. They didn't, they have maybe another car and so they don't want car rental. Okay, well now we've just found money to save them on their policy because now they're not paying for that car rental on their policy because maybe they didn't want it. So it's really a good idea to sit down with your agent, ask questions, really get into the detail because you might be able to maybe, find yourself some money that way, or really have a better true understanding for what your policy is actually going to cover. So then we can get into other things. And so believe it or not, there are lots of other details that go even after this. So something that's very popular would be, at least when we say you buy, a brand new car. So let's say you have a 2019, pick a car of your choice. So you have just bought this brand new vehicle. So something that we add to a policy when somebody calls in and they're very excited about their brand new car that they have just purchased. So my question is, how about do we want to add some new car replacement? So this is the settlement term if you get into an accident and the car is totaled. Right? So we're all familiar with getting our car, getting into an accident and having things depreciate, right? So in the auto world, that's something that's very real. So on a brand new vehicle, I will recommend or at least present the option to somebody. This is something that you might want to add to your policy in case the car would ever be totaled within the first couple years of having the car. You would then get a new car and then you wouldn't have to worry about depreciation coming into the equation of it. And I think that's a lot of times where people can get, really confused also, or even upset. I think that can be a place of upset for people too. Something else that we talk a lot about. So we have accessories. A big thing, you see these large trucks coming down the road. I'm thinking of maybe a big Ford truck and there's all kinds of big tires on it and aftermarket parts and, all of these different things that you add on to the vehicle. And so you'll want to, something again that gets overlooked if that vehicle were to be involved in an accident, there are just minimum or maximum amounts, I should say, that a policy will cover for accessory parts. So ask the agent what that dollar amount is because that is going to probably differ from, insurance to insurance company as well, what that maximum amount is. So I know people can spend thousands of dollars on additional, accessory parts that can go with that. And so, again, thousands of dollars that can potentially be covered if you just add that on to the policy. So that pretty much covers what we have for, those are the big, points that we talk about when we talk about, the product portion of the auto policy. So then it becomes, again, liability, comprehensive, collision, towing, rental. Do we want to add a brand new, settlement option to our brand new car? And then the accessories that go with that. There are a lot of other details that can go with a policy. It kind of depends on from company to company. Again, a really great idea to sit down with your agent, find out about the specifics of the policy, and does that make sense for you? what makes sense for one might not make sense for another. So again, that's why it's so important to sit down. It's probably not the most fun or entertaining conversation, but certainly if you're ever involved in an accident and have those things, that's not the time to be asking, of course, are you covered? So you want to know those things ahead of time, okay?
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So we also, backing up a little bit, we can get into limit of liability. So we've got, we always talk about the liability portion and what makes up all of these kinds of rates and these kinds of things. So liability is the portion of the policy. This is what you have to have. So this is what the state of Illinois says you absolutely have to have. Okay. So when you go and you buy an auto policy, you are purchasing liability insurance, and then you can add everything else to it. Now, the question is, how much liability maybe do I need? So we're going to take it up, and maybe we're going to do different limits of liability, okay? So this is the state minimum limit of liability, okay? This is $25,000 of bodily injury, up to $50,000. So this is per person. This is up to $50,000 per accident, and this is talking about property damage. So this is the minimum limit of liability that you purchase when you purchase an auto policy, okay? Now, some people look at that and think, you know what? That's just not enough protection. For example, maybe $20,000 of property damage if I am the cause, or I always think of it being on the wrong end of a lawsuit, right? You don't want to be on that side of it. So let's say you caused an accident and you caused property damage, okay? This is the portion of your insurance that your insurance company is going to cover on your behalf. Once that limit is exhausted, then you are responsible personally to take care of that. And so this is where I think people have a hard time making that connection and don't realize that once you exhaust whatever limit you choose, you then personally are responsible for that coverage. So really important. Limit of liability is just obviously a huge portion of what the policy premium is, but it's also very important to know what you have. Bodily injury, of course, is also something to get into a lot of conversations about. So again, I would say get with your agent, talk to them about what your options are. These are just a few. These limits of liability go beyond this as well. So I would say to take a look at your current situation and see if this is what works for you. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I need to go get my insurance policy. I was just sitting here thinking, do you really want the cheapest? I don't know.
Probably not in most cases, would be my guess, but there's so much information there to take in. The question I was thinking, where do I find this stuff? I mean, the little card that I carry around with me in case I get a speeding ticket, it's just a little, the card that you used to do your speeches with.
I know.
Or keep your recipes on.
Well, somewhere there is a policy. I think it's online.
Well, right, but where
Right.
where would I even, and so to suggest or to have a person like Noelle offer to find
Help
the
you assess
information,
show you the
and
information.
of course she has a copy of it somewhere,
Yeah.
to sit down and go through all that stuff. I mean, that's valuable because I wouldn't even know where to look.
It is very valuable, and I bet you guys are saying, hey, I have more questions. I want to know more. I want to meet with Noelle maybe. And so guess what? This is just a little taste of what she's going to share with us. But on June 11th, we're going to have a full-on little seminar out at the garden, our space.
Awesome.
There's no cost to it. You can come. So we're going to be posting that information so that we can learn more from Noelle. So I want to find out, too.
Well, we certainly hope that our audience, we make sure we see them at the garden.
Oh, yes, our audience. Well, we've had an awesome audience. Maybe you guys didn't get to see them, but we have. It's been wonderful. Do you guys have any questions? Anybody have a question?
I do, Noelle. So I'm a full grown-up, and I've had the same policy for 20 years. They mail it to me every 6 months, but I don't know what's in it. If I bring that to you, will you tell me?
Absolutely, yes. And I would encourage you to come and see me, bring it down. There's no pressure. It's just, let's sit down and go through it and help you understand what it is, of course, that you have, and then you can make decisions going forward what's best for your situation. So certainly bring that in, and we can sit down and walk through it and talk about all the difference. And obviously when we sit down one-on-one, and when we do the presentation in June, I'm going to get into more detail about specifically limited liability. We're really going to kind of dig into that. We're going to talk about claims, how to handle a claim, when should I file a claim, when I should not file a claim. Believe it or not, that there's a time for that as well. So really just kind of dig into the auto policy and things that, again, can kind of not be great and so fun to talk about, but I think once the conversation gets started, most people are intrigued to say, oh, well, what do I have? What do, where does that make a difference for me? And so that's, of course, where I come in, and certainly want to help you, figure out what it is that you would need. So.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Can't wait.
Anybody else from our, yep.
Would you recommend for June 11th to bring a copy of our own policy so we can sit and have that right in front of us to kind of compare
Yes.
with what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely something that I would recommend, because as you go through it, and if you had a copy of your policy sitting in front of you, as we walk through this, you'll be able to certainly point out where the specifics to you, or even a lot of times, if you have more than one vehicle, they'll list several of the vehicles on the page, and then you'll be able to tell, for example, which vehicle maybe has comprehensive or collision and which ones don't. A lot of times when I sit down with a client, that is something that we uncover. They maybe didn't realize that the car now is maybe 15 years old and they're still carrying collision insurance on it. Maybe that's something that you don't want to do anymore. Maybe you want to drop comprehensive. Maybe, right? So there's all of these questions when you have your own policy sitting in front of you, that just doing something simple like this, and what I will say just generic, because this is something that fits for anybody. It doesn't matter who your company is or who you are with, you're going to have liability insurance, or you better hope you have liability insurance. And then, of course, comprehensive collision, and then all of the other detail coverages that go with that as well. So,
Wow. I can't wait. I'm bringing my policy. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to assess it. One other quick question somebody might be asking, just in case. They're like, weekly winning word, assess. What is the weekly winning word, and how do I learn all about the weekly winning word? You want to tell them?
Well, I'm sure if I don't tell them correctly, you will fill them in. But we have, as members of I've Decided, and just as a community member, you get a journal.
Yes.
And in this journal, every week has a word that we use. This week happened to be assess. If you don't have your journal with you, you'll receive a text. You'll receive an email as a member of I've Decided. We spread that winning word. It kind of brings the community together, gives us something to focus on a weekly basis. What else am I missing?
No, that's it. We want you to join our community.
Yep.
And you get that weekly winning resource and connect to people like Noelle. Noelle, thank you so much for being on the show today. I can't wait for June 11th. Hey, this is your official invite. Join our community. Visit us at ivedecided.org. And let's just get started on your journey of achieving your goals and dreams, whatever that might be. Thanks for being my buddy, Kurt.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to the live audience. This was so fun. Have a rest of a good Tuesday. Stay warm out there today.
Let's see some sun.
I know we need sun. It's going to be a while, it looks like.
Thanks, Noelle.
Thank you.
PeoriaLife.com